Hi everyone, welcome to episode 3 of CC Talkies. We are here with Sonali Dasgupta today. Sonali is a physicist and a career research scientist. She's also an alumna of IIT Delhi, and today she's here in the capacity of being the founder of STEMonsters, an organization that enables a space where children are driven by their curiosity to learn. Welcome, Sonali. So happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Roopal. It's an honor and delight to be here on this wonderful platform that you have created. So looking forward to this conversation today.
I'll dive right into it, Sonali. For people who do not understand what STEM is, I want you to tell them what exactly is STEM education.
Okay, put very simply, it's an acronym for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But that's just the acronym. What STEM actually stands for is understanding these 4 pillars of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and how they work together to make the world around us. So if you think about it right now, you and I are talking over this Zoom call, and it's an after effect or it's an output of STEM because it has science in it, it has technology, engineering, and maths, which is the image processing part of it, all combined together.
Great. So, but how is it different from science that is taught in schools?
$1 million question here, and I'm so glad that you asked it. So there is nothing wrong with what is taught in schools and colleges. Of course, it's science, engineering, and maths. What it misses is integrating the knowledge we have from all of these different subjects, putting them together and understanding how they work in tandem to come up with a solution which is beneficial for the society. So if you think of any one of them in isolation, then as such, science is not very useful unless it doesn't help the society. And science cannot work on its own, nor can engineering or technology. So it is only when we understand how to use this fundamental knowledge of science and engineering to come up with something that is beneficial for the society in an integrated manner. That is what STEM is all about. So I think if you're talking of the traditional ways of learning, it looks at each of the subjects in isolation, which makes it difficult for the children once they are out there in the real world to understand how to apply that knowledge. So
that's quite interesting, Sonali. I remember one of my, classroom lessons in physics. I think we were studying about projectile. And class 9th or something. And the moment I understood what it was, I said, even at that 14-year-old, 13-year-old, that's how old I was thinking this should be taught in the playgrounds. It'll be so easy to understand the idea of a projectile in a playground or in an activity-based environment. So is that an extension of what you're saying?
So it is definitely one of the ways to introduce science and technology to the children, because unless they make a connect with what's happening in the real world, it ends up being rote memorization. So for example, I'm so glad you mentioned about the playground. So a concept which is as complicated for those of you who have a little bit of, in the audience who have a little bit of background in sciences, there's a very complicated concept called resonance. And people get worried about what is it. And the fact that it's the same resonance concept which helps a child go in a swing higher and higher when they are being pushed at a certain frequency is resonance. And that is exactly what STEM is about. It's about taking that science out of the 4 walls of a classroom, bringing it out in the open and helping the children understand and relate how it is coming up in their everyday life. So one of the things which STEM education does, and which I keep iterating, is it helps with the 3 R's, as I put it: retention, recall, and relate. So it helps in longer retention, faster recall, and better relate to the problem that we're trying to solve.
Wow, I like that summing up of retention, recall, and relate, because if you see, Sonali, actually most of our academic education, any subject that you pick, I think the problem with that and the struggle that students have with, padhai as such, why padhai feels like such a burden, or any academic coursework feels like such a burden, because we are not tying it up to our everyday life. when all of it, whether you see literature, whether you see stories, whether you see social studies, any study of political science or scientific studies, right, and mathematics, all of it, if it's applied to a regular life of a child's daily life, I think it'll be so much easier for them to apply and understand all of it, right? And what you are actually saying should be a part of the school curriculum instead of STEM education being a separate class, so-called online courses or offline courses to do. I wish it was part of the curriculum itself, right?
Yes, I think the first thing for children, any child, to actually find their true potential is to make them want to learn. And once you get them want to learn and once you get them engaged, then more than half the battle is won already, because it is that innate curiosity, it is that innate willingness to learn that will motivate them to keep working on it by themselves, rather than having a fear psychosis of, I need to get marks, I need to pass my exams, my parents are going to scold me. If it is, oh, I want to learn it myself, I want to figure out how this works, the results are completely opposite.
Interesting. So what you're saying is STEM basically takes the child beyond textbooks, beyond classrooms, and develops this innate curiosity to learn. So Sonali, how do you do that? How do you inculcate this desire, this curiosity to learn?
I think for me, the first thing that all of us want to do, adults and children alike, is have fun in whatever we do. If you're not having fun, if you're being forced to do something, we lose interest in some time or the other. It does not matter whether it's for our career or not. We need to have fun. And I think that is the fundamental way in which we create the curriculum at STEMonsters. The second is, rather than seeing and listening, what works to get us engaged, again, adults and children alike, is if we get to experiment and do things on our own. If it is an experience rather than listening. So fun experience together is what STEMonsters is all about. So in our classes, what we do is we give the part to the children to experience with things hands-on, do experiments, make a mess, figure out what goes wrong and what goes right, and in the process have fun, but also very subtly tell them that it's okay to fail. And it's okay to fail and learn from those failures. Because part of the reason why children and parents get pushed towards rote learning in our current education system is nobody wants to fail. And if we don't fail, how do we come up with something new?
I think that's a beautiful, beautiful sentiment to sort of, I'm interjecting you here, but yeah, let children fail, let adults fail, let everybody fail, because failure teaches us, so many things. And unfortunately, again, right from childhood, we are in fact shamed for failing. We are only awarded or celebrated for winning, for our victories. So much so that over the years, we forget. So you're focusing on innovation-based learning, if I'm not wrong, right? And how to sort of seed that idea in, right? To find a problem and say, and then to seek answers or not.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, what I like to call it is developing that scientific aptitude in children, because it takes a long time to develop the aptitude. You can't do it in a month or 3 months. It has to be a personality development. So what we do with our programs that we offer is week on week, we have fun. And it's not a tangible, so, in this era nowadays is a very fast food era. Enroll your child in a program. I want results after 3 months. I want results after 6 months. But what we fail to understand, that a child needs time to evolve and come up and become somebody that we want them to be. Whether it's a scientific mindset, innovative mindset, it takes time and it's not a tangible output. Now, it's also interesting that you talk of this reward of, we forget to fail because we always want success. And I think there lies the question of societal change in how we define a reward, because marks and exams and rewards which are tangible are very momentary. But when this reward is actually coming from us within ourselves through something which is like, the scientifically speaking, again, there is this reward of dopamine. We get addicted to something because there is this dopamine. It's a chemical thing, right?
Very, very well said, Sonali. But you know what? While you were telling about this marks and the academic pressure that we've been discussing, but if you see from our generation to now, that has already shifted. I think a lot of parents are now open to, what used to be extracurricular activities in our times. Now they are a part of the main curriculum. In fact, parents are more encouraging, towards their children to pursue fields that seemed alternative in, back in our times. But if you see that the same pressure that was on academic pressure is now being applied to these alternative streams, so-called alternative streams. Yeah, even if a child is pursuing arts, we want our child to be the best. Again, failure is not an option. We're not allowing children to make a mess, but we want them to create perfect little drawings, and we put them in classes so early on. Instead of letting them explore the materials, the paints, or understanding what it really means to them, right? Or even in sports. Again, the pressure is on the child to excel rather than, on performing rather than on failing or learning from failures, right? So recently there was this whole, you remember, I won't be mentioning the brand, but of course we all know this whole pressure of coding, online coding classes, especially during the pandemic, right? For 6-year-olds, right? And I was quite surprised at that time because personally, I believe that yes, the scientific temper has to be developed before we put any child in any sort of classes, for that matter, but to each parent their own. What do you think about online coding classes for children, especially at that young age?
I think, to be honest with you, I feel there is a lot of parental peer pressure nowadays. It is not about the child anymore. True. It is about the parents wanting to prove to their peers that they are ahead of the curve in terms of bringing up the children. And we have somehow, somewhere lost the plot. So if we talk about coding, it is there were parents who approached us during that time as well, asking, do you do coding? And to me, the question was, tomorrow you might say, do they know Java? Do they know Scratch, which is a wonderful platform, by the way. I love that. But the idea is, it's not about coding. It is about developing a scientific aptitude. The fact how you approach a problem, approach it systematically, logically. Once you are able to understand that, you don't need to learn coding per se. Coding is a way of solving a problem. And as you grow up, let your child explore what they want to explore. And eventually they will get a hang of it. I will be very, very wrong if I say we don't require technical knowledge. Children don't need technological knowledge. Children don't need coding knowledge. That is very wrong. I would never say that. But if you look at it, there was a time when there was a lot of push that we will help your child become an app developer at 6 years of age. We have these programs which are hands-on programs using simple things like, even to give you an example, we were working with these children trying to make a seismograph to measure earthquakes, and a very simplistic mechanical model. But to someone who is not initiated, it would look like, what is my child doing making cardboards and a seismograph out of sketch pens? But the engineering thought process that goes into it, the fact that the child goes onto the internet and says, you know what, the seismographs which are sold out there are electronic, electromagnetic rather than mechanical, and then tries to develop further on that, is what you want. You want them to build up on what is happening, adapt to the technology that's happening, and adapt to how new problems that are unheard of, how they need to be tackled.
Exactly. So what they're already learning in school is what has already been done, instead of letting them believe, understand what needs to be done in the future, because the future will hold newer problems. I was actually coming to that next, Sonali. Could you discuss some of the very simple experiments that you do in your classes or in your programs, that children understand? Use any magical moment that you can share with us that a child came across while during one of these.
Oh my God, there are so many of them. I would be at a loss to find one, because each and every session for us ends up, because our program is very highly child driven. Okay. So children are free to ask whatever. There's no stupid question. We start off with that. There are no stupid questions.
Right.
So you can ask what you want. So I still remember last week, in fact. So there's so many. So I'll just say what was happening last week. These were like 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. And what we were doing with them is discussing about so we were trying to draw different types of galaxies that are out there during our space module. So we started talking about galaxies, and one child, 11-year-old, asks me, and this is a question I'm probably going to put up to on LinkedIn for all the parents and adults to answer, is Einstein said E is equal to mc squared. We all know that, whether we are from a science background or not. And that means that if m is equal to 0, mass is 0, there's no energy. 0 into energy is 0.
Right.
So the child, 11-year-old, photons, which are light particles, they have no mass. Light has energy.
Right.
How do these two come together?
Right.
It's an amazing thing. These are questions which should come in a child's mind. It didn't occur to me. Of course, I went back and I answered and all of that. But imagine an 11-year-old coming and asking a question of that sort and thinking about it.
Exactly. That's the victory right there. Yeah, that's exactly what we want.
Seismograph, for example, the seismograph I said we were making with mechanical seismograph, right? And this child in grade 8, he comes and he says, you know what? I see that the ones which are sold in the market, they use blah 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 X, Y, Z components. Do you think I could make it at home? How much would it cost? Would it be less than 1 lakh rupees?
I love that.
And can I start saving up and making it on my own in a few years' time? That is what you want.
Yeah, not just a scientist, but a scientist backing their own invention as well.
They have to be nurtured from a young age to think from these perspectives, things which are going to be useful for society, to be inclusive for the society, to be something which will solve for unknown problems.
So, Sonali, just for, quickly, what can parents do? Like, what kind of things can parents do at home to say, inculcate this curiosity? Because I remember seeing posts on your Instagram, STEMonsters Instagram account about science beginning from the kitchen itself, right? And that is true, right? It's all kinds of chemicals going together to create something that we all love to engage with, which is food. So, where can parents really begin at home?
I think every moment that you spend with your child is an opportunity for you to inculcate that curiosity. I'll give a few examples, but before that, I also want to bring to notice one thing is about this curiosity and the reward-based curiosity that we want to inculcate, because all of us have curiosity. Curiosity can be good and it can be bad. But what we are talking over here is the curiosity which develops into a pleasurable state for the child. Right. So that curiosity has to be inculcated in a way where it is not too difficult for the child to understand. At the same time, it still challenges them to look forward. So it has to be that balance. But having said that, once we are clear on that, each and every moment is a way to inculcate curiosity. Very simply saying, if I'm going on a morning walk for my child and one day I see this, touch me not plants, which by skin touch, they fold, the leaves fold. And so my child asks, how does that even happen? Guide them, tell them, how do you think that is happening? Don't give an answer immediately. Right. Do you think it's a chemical reaction? Do you think it's a touch reaction? Do you think it's going to fold if you blow on it instead of touching it? Feed them with questions. Right. And I think that's the best thing you could do from the age of 3 years to 6 years. Do that on a daily basis. And I can assure each and every parent the kind of questions that they will come up with would be mind-boggling. Of course, I have had the opposite feedback as well. A child has joined STEMonsters, asks fantastic questions, reads up, and the parent comes back and says, we have a different kind of a problem. And so, what's the problem? Oh, Dr. Sonali, you know what? The teachers are complaining. He asks way too many questions in class right now. I have had that written. So, and it all again then boils down to the current education system. And of course, school has its own limitations. So that is where enrichment engagement programs come in for the parents to believe that, what are we doing as parents to give them that extra platform, additional platform where they can go and seek answers.
Exactly. Absolutely. And that brings me to one more thing, a childhood experience of mine. I remember every Diwali, we used to do these lights, right? We used to light up those fairy lights that we had.
Yeah.
And we had the same. I remember my uncle always had this very scientific bent of mind. I remember we saw the solar cooker first because of him. And he was always very focused on this. And he used to ask the children in the house, and there were four of us. I had three brothers, and I was the only girl, to fix the lights every year. We would not buy new lights. You know, he would fix the lights every year and then put the same lights on. But I was never asked to be a part of it because I was a girl. It just so happened that, yeah, you know, like there'll be electric current, there'll be something. I was made to feel afraid of this, and very early on, I understood that changing the light bulb or even say fixing these electric lights on Diwali was not my job. That's what the boys do, right? And if you see in the larger narrative of STEM or even in science, you know, technology, engineering, maths, women have not found much representation, right? So do you see that change in terms of the students that are coming to you, or in how parents approach it? Is there still a gender bias in STEM?
Now while you were mentioning it, I was getting goosebumps actually, because it's just, I keep hearing these answers time and time again. Yes, there is a gender bias. Definitely. I was fortunate enough to never have gone through it, and I've made a very conscious effort not to let my child go through it. Mm-hmm. However, having said that, societal perception of STEM and women and girls is a huge problem. It's a huge issue that needs to be tackled at the grassroots level. And in terms of the students who come to me, so I see a lot of children who are girls. So we have a very equal base in terms of ratio of girls and boys at the younger years, which is grade 3 to, let's say, grade 5 and 6. Where I start seeing the change happening is once they are in 7th, 8th, 9th. Okay. And that is when slowly I kind of see that the ratio is starting to change. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is, although in India, we have one of the largest number of women in STEM who are pursuing STEM for higher degrees, our women in STEM as a profession is one of the lowest. The second is, suddenly after it's 7th, 8th, 9th, fathers then come into the picture for their sons to get them interested or engaged or enrolled in our program. Okay. And slowly the girls and the moms start taking a backseat.
That's an interesting observation.
Interesting, yes, it is. And even more unfortunately, what I observe is, if you go by the records data, women in STEM from India, we are amongst one of the countries with highest number of women in STEM education till high school or even graduation. But once we start looking at women in STEM in the professional careers, we are amongst one of the lowest. So there's this huge leaky pipeline which happens somewhere after the girls have finished their education and they have moved on to careers.
Right.
And it is just unfortunate because we have this huge number of women who have been educated in STEM fields, but who are now not contributing to the economy of the country. And as an economy, it is well understood, if you want to as an economy, if you want to be a developed economy, the contribution from women in areas of STEM has to be significant. And STEM is one of those things which is not just about India. STEM is going to be the ruling domain in whatever fields we think of.
Absolutely.
Whether it's like photography, media, printing, publishing, everything is going to be dominated by STEM.
One last thing, Sonali, since we're talking about asking questions and seeking answers, of course, we all know that our biggest, where do we go to seek answers? At the tip of a finger is, of course, Google, right? Google search is this big monster and the big angel at the same time, right? It answers all our questions. And that has become a go-to thing, right? It's an immediate, the first reaction now is so much so that Google has replaced, it's synonymous for search, right?
Yes.
What is your opinion on that? Like, how do we need to cut that habit, curtail it in some way, or what needs to
I
change?
think, I think the biggest curse that we have and our children have is overload of information,
True.
and information which is not being vetted.
Mm.
Because as children, they don't know what is right, what
Mm.
is vetted, what is authentic.
Mm.
There is a lot of fake news out there,
Mm.
and there's an overload of information.
Right.
So I think personally, yes, it's a boon in a lot of cases,
Mm.
but it is a bigger bane
Mm.
if it is not guided, if the children are not guided while they are interacting and engaging with Google.
What I really align with STEMonsters, Sonali, is the fact that we at Cornucopia are also trying to do a story-driven consciousness in that sense, right? We are trying to introduce thoughtful, fun, and entertaining cinema for our children, which helps them navigate, issues in their lives, which are perhaps even beyond, say any academics or any sort of education. It's the issues that they are dealing with in their everyday life. And you talked about having fun is as being the core thing of your classes at STEMonsters, which is what we want to do at Cornucopia as well. In fact, one of our latest releases, Saving Amelia, is about these two girls who are trying to save Amelia Earhart, who disappeared in 1937, and they actually help, save her through the help of Google Earth, because now the technology is,
Yes.
way more advanced than it was in 1937. So it's a wonderful little leap of imagination that happens in that film. And our next film, that is Catapult, is also another very interesting film about this young boy who has lost, he's separated from his first crush, who is now in America. And
Okay.
he devises and, invents, with the help of his grandfather, this huge catapult that will give him a leap
Wow.
from Hungary to America.
Oh, that's
It's a
wonderful.
brilliant little lovely film about,
Beautiful.
which uses science, which uses emotions, all of that, in a wonderful way.
Yeah, I mean, I always say there is no
Yeah,
science without imagination.
exactly. And magic, right? And which
Yeah.
is also true about storytelling. There is no storytelling without science, if you
Yes,
study about the technical aspects of filmmaking, right? And magic. So I think there's a culmination that we have here between STEMonsters and Cornucopia. And
absolutely. I mean, I think Cornucopia Pictures, I've gone through your playlist of the movies, and one of the things which I have loved is we were talking about Google and children being on the
yeah,
internet. Is one of those spaces where I, as a parent, would be comfortable to leave my child on.
thank
And
you.
you go and you explore and you get entertained. And at the same time, it is not mindless entertainment. It
Exactly.
is entertainment which is very subtly telling them to be imaginative, curious, and brave. And at the end of the day, that is all we want as parents, as a society. You know,
Absolutely. That's what we
that's
want
it.
at Cornucopia too. And I'm glad to have connected over this discussion with you, Sonali. Thank you so much for being a part of this discussion. And
It
yeah,
has
we
been a delight.
continue to work with you and collaborate with you over future endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Roopal. It has been a pure delight discussing the things which are very close to my heart.
Guys, please follow STEMonsters on Instagram, and do check out their website, STEMonsters.com, to see what kind of classes they're coming up with. And also subscribe to Cornucopia Pictures and see what kind of content we have in store for you.